back in the 1920s, Christian scholarship was advancing because of linguistic analysis. And students of Hebrew and Greek were very carefully studying the Bible. And they discovered that the book of Genesis, that normally people think was written by Moses, who wrote the 5 first books of the Bible, they discovered that it was a paste up of various creation stories. 1, 2, I think 3 creation stories. They also did linguistic analysis of the way language is used in the book of Isaiah, and said that there were 2 Isaiahs. There was not just one. They studied the New Testament and were very particular in terms of that. For instance, when they got to the Gospel of John, they showed how it was influenced by Greek Gnosticism and the Plato belief of the forms, those like a form means you see all different kind of trees, and there is one tree up here in the sky, God's possessing of the original tree. But the belief in these forms became part of Christianity. So scholarship was advancing. And this seemed to panic the religious fundamentalists. And so they became and developed what is called fundamentalism. And now the word fundamental has spread to any ideology that is trying to get back to the absolute, pure, undefiled truth. And so these people wrote the fundamentals. And they actually, some of them were from Princeton Seminary and Princeton University. And they said that you've got to believe these. This is the real, total, complete, absolute Christian message. The virgin birth, that Jesus was not a result of sex. He was put in Mary's womb by an angel. And they go on to say that Jesus was incarnate God. For a while he had this body, but when he died, the resurrection of the body was another great principle of theirs. Jesus is Christ, so the deity of Christ, the Holy Trinity, the inspiration of the Bible, and every word should not be analyzed by these liberal scholars who are looking at Genesis and Isaiah throughout the Old Testament, making sure that history is understood from different accounts. And then they said, no, you've got to believe that the Bible is totally, complete, verbally inspired. And then everybody needs to be converted from sin, because sin is going against the Holy Spirit, against God, against Jesus, so not believing in Jesus. And so you've got to have salvation, and God gives it to you out of His grace. The church is very important. You've got to attend church. You've got to tithe. You've got to stay within the fold of the people of God and not looking at other sinful options. And finally they said there's a second coming, that Jesus is going to come back from the sky, and He's going to come back and He's going to take the pure people, the believers, and up to heaven. And so these fundamentals were written down, distributed, and became the rallying cry for evangelists around the United States. In the mid-20th century, Billy Graham came along, and William Randolph Hearst, who had the media fortune, said Puff Graham, P-U-F-F Graham. And he sent that two-word message out to all his media empire. And so Billy Graham got to be very, very important. Billy Graham, at age 14, had been converted, and he knew the ultimate truth at age 14. And he was a good speaker, a handsome man. He got a team of good singers, music directors, people who would distribute literature, public relations people. And because of William Randolph Hearst's empire, he got to be very famous. And from him, there became more and more emphasis on evangelical theology. So fundamentalism filtered down into evangelical theology, and we have these mega churches all over the United States that are proclaiming the illusions of evangelical theology. So I want you to know that it's a scam. It's fortified by delusional thinking. It's a grand hoax perpetuated by hustlers who deal with quackery. Now, why do I say such powerful judgmental words about evangelicals? Don't we have freedom of religion in this country? Yes, you can believe in snakes and drinking poison if you want to. That's part of the United States. If you want to believe in the quackery of the Mormons, that some man looking into a hat with rocks in it is dictating the Mormon Bible, and it's funny that he must have read a little bit of the King James first, because here he is, 2 centuries after the King James came out, talking in King James English as he dictates the Mormon Bible. It's strange. It's very strange. These ideologies give hope to people in the sense that they want to believe they have total certainty, absolute truth, and are self-righteous to the max. So we've got to employ the scalpel, virgin birth. Virgin births were very common in the ancient world because it was a way to get fame, to say, nope, my father and mother didn't do it. Instead, God's planted in my mother a seed. So virgin births were very common in the ancient world. As for the Bible, it was written by men. The scholars in the 1920s who have began studying have continued, and at divinity schools around the United States, from Duke to Atlanta, Emory to Yale, Harvard, Princeton, and California, University of Chicago, they continue that study. However, they don't get the press that the media affords the evangelicals, because the evangelicals are a large voting bloc that some politicians like Rand Paul will not go against them at all, because he'd be losing 40% of votes if he runs for president. As for proof of heaven and hell, there is none. That's blarney. It's just a wish, exaggerated. Of course, in their system, you've got to always notice the flat earth. God is up, God comes down. Angels are up, angels come up. Jesus was up, Jesus came up. Jesus goes back up. Angels come back down. It's all flat earth. Heaven is up, hell is down. Now, will somebody please tell those people to study just a little bit about cosmology, a little bit about astronomy, because heaven is not up, hell is not down. I understand why hell came forth, by the way. I studied in terms of the Greek. It's the word Gehenna, and Gehenna was the garbage dump outside Jerusalem. It was in a ravine, and when somebody died who was like a homeless person, didn't have anybody to take care of them, they would be buried in Gehenna. So the word came forth, you better watch out, you better not shout, because Santa Claus, God, has come into town, and you're going to be buried in Gehenna, in the garbage dump, if you don't watch out. Well, all this stuff is funny. Sin works for those, you're a sinner. That works for those who feel bad about themselves, who are abused by their families, or have not been able to make it in society, and they believe themselves down and out. And sin really works. And by the way, you can see, if you study the range of denominations in this United States, from the Episcopalians down to the Congregationalists, to the Methodists, to the Baptists, to the Adventists, to the Assemblies of God, to the Pentecostals. If you just look at their parking lots, you will see the poorer cars are here in the Pentecostals, move up, Assembly, and then go on back up, and the very wealthy automobiles, are in the Episcopalian or Anglican communities. And the emphasis on sin goes down in terms of, it's funny, in terms of wealth. I guess the wealthy people don't have any sin, because it's very seldom mentioned in Anglican churches. In congregational churches, it's diminished. And we go on down the line. Methodists don't talk about sin as much as the Pentecostals do. It's a funny world. It's a funny system. And it's a nutty ideology. As for the second coming, it is interesting to see what Jesus is supposed to come back on. For a long time, they said he would come back in a chariot. Then he would come back in a carriage. And now I guess he's going to come back in a 707 jet plane. This is absurd. We have to learn to live in this world. Our bodies are not sinful. Sex is not sinful. The thing is, here, when you think of the consequences, people are being hurt daily, weekly, on Sunday mornings through this nonsense. Their identities are crippled. They think that their bodies are bad, that they will get a new body when they go to heaven. In the early Christian fathers, they actually, the Christian theologians in the early centuries, would guess what kind of body you would have in heaven. And finally some man won. I mean, some early theologian. He said that when you get to heaven, you're going to be like a sphere, a perfect sphere. You'll be like a bowling ball. And, oh, this is nuts. It's crazy. But, I mean, that's kind of a nonsense that hurts people. It hurts the society when you have millions of gullible people. Of course, they're good fodder for going to war because they've learned obedience in church. I believe in freedom. I believe in using your mind. I believe in analyzing and criticizing, and most of all in being and having a life, to feel the sun, to swim in the water, to dance, to sing, to play, to run, to create. Do you think there are many creative people coming out of the evangelical community? I do not believe so. I have seen no evidence of that. So, in the 21st century, what are we going to do? We have nutty ideologies, right, left, center, above our heads, down in hell. And we've got ideologies all over the place. And we've got to remember that good citizens do oppose these ideologies. And one healthy thing that appears in media are the funny shows that appear late in the evening as they make fun of these nutty ideologies. So I say, learn to laugh, because all your life you're going to be surrounded by gun nuts, evangelical nuts, religious nuts, political nuts. You best learn to experience life and enjoy it, and develop a sense of humor, because, my God, we're surrounded.